There are many benefits to building your personal brand, especially if you're a salesperson working for a technical company. In your case, you have to have authority, credibility. You have to help that buyer know that you're there for them, that you can help them solve a complex challenge, whether that's through your knowledge directly or helping them find the answer. And you might be tasked with keeping up with relationships over time as an account manager, which is, of course, yet again, a reason to have a strong personal brand and a steady cadence of one-to-many conversations that you can make on personal branding platforms. Well, today I'm bringing on Chris Luecke, who's the host of the Manufacturing Happy Hour and is a recovering technical salesperson, worked for more than a decade at Rockwell Automation and a SaaS company as well. And he's here to share his story of how he built his personal brand, how it benefited him as a technical salesperson, and provide advice to you if you're just getting started in this area. We'll also talk about how marketing can help technical salespeople establish their credibility and build their personal brands. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, True Marketing. True is a full-service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit truemarketing.com. And now on with our podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by my friend Chris Luecke from the Manufacturing Happy Hour. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Good to be here, Wendy.
I think you're a two-peat guest on my show, so I'm happy to have you back. And, I thought today, Chris, we would tap into not only what you're doing now as the face and host and founder of Manufacturing Happy Hour, but also something you did really well in your formal life as a technical sales manager. You are at Rockwell and Fix Software. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. Spent about a little over a decade in the industrial automation and software sales world.
And on the dark side of sales, as we marketers say.
I thought it was the light side. I remembered hearing that for a long time, but once I made the jump to software, I'm like, this is kind of nice. No supply chain issues right now.
Oh man, we're feeling those. I have a 20-year-old with a car down because her hybrid batteries are caught up in supply chain. And oh, the drama, Chris. Oh, the drama.
The world we live in today. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to get in your head, especially thinking about you as this technical salesperson that you were. And I have a feeling that it plays into why you started the Manufacturing Happy Hour. And the two are pretty related. And that was the idea of building your personal brand and raising your profile at the time. But correct me if I'm wrong. Could I hear that story?
Yeah, happy to tell the story. So you're right. I was a technical salesperson for Rockwell Automation, selling automation hardware and solutions, and helping equipment manufacturers with their, let's say, their digital transformation efforts when I was out in the Bay Area. And simply put, the reason I started Manufacturing Happy Hour at the time, the number one reason was I needed a way to reach a new audience. And here's what I mean by that. I had been working as a sales guy right out of college in Houston, Texas, where the market was, let's say, a bit more senior. People had been at their companies for years and years. I was calling on, a decision maker that was, probably in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and things like that. So face-to-face meetings, handshakes, all of that was important. When I moved to the Bay Area, roughly 4 years into my career, and I was calling on folks in the San Francisco Bay, everyone has their stereotype of what a typical worker in the Bay Area is, like a young 20-something, 30-something, making decisions, calling the shots. And, there's some truth to that, right? The age, the demographic of my customer base had changed, and I needed a new way to reach them. So yes, I was still doing face-to-face meetings, but I thought to myself, okay, I'm a millennial, I'm 29 at the time. How do I consume content? And I'm like, well, videos, podcasts, the internet, all the typical things where a do-it-yourselfer 20-something would go to get educated or stay informed on what the industry was doing. So, I was in my apartment one Saturday afternoon, and I propped up my iPhone on a selfie stick that was, supported by a stack of books because I didn't have any of the right equipment to create a video series. But nevertheless, I got the iPhone propped up, I hit record, and I pitched the idea to some mentors at Rockwell Automation and said, hey, I got this idea. I'm going to talk about, automation. The way you talk about it is if you were having a beer with someone, right? And it was Saturday, so I'd poured myself a beer just to exemplify the point. I didn't really have a name for it at the time, but it's like, hey, let's talk about it as if we're having a drink with one another. And from there, Manufacturing Happy Hour was born. It initially started, particularly for the first 9 months, as just a kind of a campy video series I filmed on my iPhone. I posted the videos to YouTube. They never went viral, but I just included them in a customer newsletter. So that way my audience that I wanted to see it was seeing them. So that's how it all started. It wasn't until after that I started sharing it more to LinkedIn that it really turned into a personal branding aspect that is still a huge part of what it is today.
Yeah. Well, digging in a little bit on those early years. So I heard you say, I knew that, well, one, the demographics were different. So understanding your audience and how they consume information. But two, you saw the need for content and you saw specifically video, I heard in that. So, I mean, why not just utilize the company website and stuff marketing's creating? Why create your own video and your own e-newsletter? And of course, I'm not asking in a defensive way, but I think there's some good reasons for this.
No, it's a great question, and I'll share a bit about why I started that versus just going the route of, hey, let's just send them the company website, right? A
Yeah.
couple of reasons went into it. One, as a salesperson, you're kind of showcasing your personal brand in a one-on-one meeting or when you're working with your account base on a regular basis. For context, I was calling on an account package. I was an account manager. So, my customers knew me. I had relationships with them. So whether you have a digital personal brand or not, if you're a salesperson, that type of role, if you're a technical salesperson, even if you're an engineer that works with a regular set of customers, your personal brand is still out there on a regular basis. Just because it's not on LinkedIn or on a camera doesn't mean it's not a reflection of your personal brand. So it kind of played in naturally to what I was doing as a salesperson anyway. The other thing was, and I think this is important for anyone to do, is look at your strengths, look at what you enjoy doing. For me, I've always enjoyed being on stage, being on camera, being on a microphone. I know that's probably, I know it's more of the exception rather than the rule, but I knew I wanted to do more of that. So my initial avenue was, hey, I'm just going to record it on my iPhone because I already own this. I don't need to go buy new stuff. And it's a skill that I want to hone and continue to use again. The reason I bring that up, I gravitated towards video at the start, is if someone does not like being on camera or they're more comfortable communicating in another way, there are different ways to build up your digital personal brand. I mean, you can share pictures with a narrative about what you were doing. You could share that narrative could be about a problem you helped solve. You don't need to name a customer, but it could just be, it could be a general story. At the end of the day, if you have a way to share stories, whether that's through written word, whether it's through pictures, whether it's through video or audio, all those options are out there to help build a personal brand. So I'd say the main lesson is you got to figure out, hey, who your audience is. That was kind of the moral of the first story. And once you know that audience, know how they consume content and how you're strong at producing content. Because whether you like it or not, we all have a personal brand. We embody our personal brand in our day-to-day human-to-human interfaces on Zoom calls and in-person meetings on a regular basis. So you might as well figure out what way plays to your strengths to amplify that in the digital world as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say, along with that, we have this annual State of Marketing to Engineers research report. And the number one reason these technical buyers say they want to engage with the salesperson for the first time is the technical complexity of the solution. So there's this expectation, right? That, and this is a little bit, I guess, less about account management and more about that first engagement, but there's still this expectation of, you're going to be able to help me solve my problem. I'm looking to you as a technical resource, whether, you yourself have that, or you have others within your company you can connect me to. So I think knowing someone's expectation when they engage is really important too, so that you can meet them where they are.
I would agree. I think, and it goes back to knowing your audience and who you're speaking with. Like, I know the way manufacturing happy hour has evolved. I tell people all the time, it is a leadership podcast disguised as a manufacturing podcast. We talk about the bits and bytes more than you would on a typical regular old entrepreneurship or leadership show, for example. But I know my podcast is not the one that's diving in as deep into the technical aspects as maybe some other ones in the manufacturing space are. And that's okay, because I know my audience is looking for more of those stories, slightly higher level content, ways to solve their people challenge, their technical challenges, their cultural challenges. I think when you know who you're talking to and know what their expectations are, like you were saying, it becomes easier to start producing that content because you become more confident that you're sharing things that are relevant to that audience.
Yeah. And I like your example too of sharing a story of a customer's problem that you solved. And that just feels very authentic and easy for somebody to put together because it's a firsthand experience, right? Tell me, so you mentioned LinkedIn was sort of an amplifier for the manufacturing happy hour and for your own personal brand. So tell me about how that went down.
So I don't know why I remember it, but it was like exactly 9 months into shooting my videos. I finally decided one day, it would have been sometime like late 2017, when LinkedIn was still the resume platform. There wasn't a lot of personality on that social platform. For whatever reason, I'm like, you know what? I should share one of these videos to LinkedIn. Let's see what happens if other people see it besides my customers. And I don't know if I got lucky that day, but it posted pretty well. I think it got like 30 reactions, which back then it felt like a gold mine of people that were interested. So, I had already had a base of content built up. So for me, it was very easy to be like, okay, well, I'll share something next week. And then I just kept seeing it resonate. People liked it. They are certainly not my best videos I ever made. They were very early in the process. I was just doing them on my iPhone, which gets the job done, but I hadn't, really invested in production at all. But I think what helped me was I was one of the first to the game doing that. Like by the nature of me doing a video and posting a link to it on YouTube, it stood out. And I think one thing I try to coach people on now is you got to pay attention to what the baseline expectation is, right? If I were to do that today, my video would probably just get lost in the noise, because now people have figured out it's like, oh, I can go to a trade show and film videos at my booth, or I can, some people have even gone as far as to switch their video format to like the TikTok and the Reels format. They're vertical videos right now because that's what people expect, right? So I'm always trying to think, it's like, okay, what are, based on how everyone is consuming content in the market and how everyone is sharing content in the market, what are the things that I can continue to try to do to stay a step ahead of what everyone else is doing right now? So I'm going a little further in my story than you had initially asked, but long story short, when I first shared it to YouTube, it started gaining traction because I was able to show up on a consistent basis, because I already had 9 months of content built up. That was probably 20 something videos at that point. So I wasn't having to be like, oh man, I need to create a new video for next week. I already had that. And the other thing was, I was looking at the state of content consumption in the B2B space right now. And I'm like, I think there's a place in B2B for this in manufacturing. It doesn't quite exist yet, but I'm going to be the one to take that first step. And as a result, because it wasn't a very crowded space at the time, I stood out. So that's how that initial sharing of my videos on LinkedIn went.
Fair enough. And I appreciate that you did share how it's evolved and become noisier and you need to think of new ways to stand out and also being consistent, right? It can't be just once a month sharing something and expect to get traction. It needs to be more part of your weekly routine and something that you plan for. I do think that for those technical salespeople that don't get excited about creating content, but they still understand the value of having a personal brand, that is an opportunity to take company content, but then add a point of view to it and share and just leverage those resources. I've seen that work really well. Again, consistently though is so key.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, and I'll add to that because I'm someone that very recently went full time to run my own business on my own. But for the majority of my career, I've been working for a company, and I think what you bring up is very important because a lot of people listening to this are probably folks that work for a company as well, and I think it's important to understand what the company brand voice is as well. So that way you're not doing something that's a complete 180 from that voice. I think you want to, because at the end of the day, these companies have marketing departments. They've put a lot of time into understanding the customers, what resonates with them. So it's a good guide to initially be like, okay, this is the brand voice, but this is my voice. How do I marry the two together to create something that is in line with the brand voice, but maybe a little different? So that way it resonates with a different person or resonates more strongly with a different person. I think that's the big strength of companies and personal brands working together. You can have the voice of the company, but as long as the people that are out there leveraging their personal brands to amplify the voice of the company understand what that voice is, those little tweaks that allow them to mix their personality and mix their viewpoint in, like you said, can be a huge strength and pull in people that, hey, maybe the company brand just doesn't resonate as strongly with that particular persona, that customer, that individual, etc., as that person's personal brand does.
Yeah. I also think about the an interesting situation where you have reps that have several different products and different brands that their company represents. And there it's a little bit different, right? Because you have your rep firm brand, then you have each of these individual products in your portfolio, and then you have your personal brand, right? Your credibility as a technical salesperson, and all of those are considerations in those posts. And I think that's an interesting situation to be in. Do you have any advice for those folks?
I do, and this may be more for the companies than the individuals, but I'll share my perspective on this, and maybe we can take it a step further after this. I think this is one of the big strengths where a company can really take advantage of leveraging a lot of personal brands within an organization, because I've come from organizations that had thousands of SKUs, thousands of parts, thousands of products, etc. So how am I going to be the personal brand to represent all of them? Or how does a company, make sure they're resonating with the right people for all these different brands, different line items, etc.? Well, hey, maybe someone, I'll just say this from an automation standpoint, maybe someone within the company is the drives person, and the company wants to leverage that person as the voice of drives. And maybe someone else is the automation person. They want to leverage that person as the voice of automation. Maybe someone else is the components person, and the brand wants to leverage that person and their personal brand as the components voice of the company. That's a great way to start working into those different, let's say, product areas of focus that, I think it's, reps are one thing, but companies are almost always representing a number of different products. And I think that's where you can leverage individual personal brands within the company to be like, hey, this is the automation lady, or hey, this is the drives guy, whomever that may be. And I think that's a great way to start resonating with those different personas that maybe in a different buying mode for a particular product, or might not even need one of the products. That's a great way for companies to start leveraging the power of personal brands. And I think when it comes to an individual level, if you're representing a lot of stuff, look for other people that are experts in those areas, right? I know I'm not the expert in all things manufacturing. The reason I run manufacturing happy hours, so that way I can highlight the voices of other people that are the expert in AI or the expert in digital transformation. So I look at that as, creators, companies, individuals will have their unique areas of focus, right? And the more you can leverage those individuals, whether it's you as a personal brand or whether it's you representing a company brand, I think that's how you can amplify and be targeted, even if you're representing a lot of different line items.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just sitting here imagining the situation, this collaboration between you have the drives expert, like you said, and the components expert, and then you have the rep firm that deals with a lot of different drives, right? And so they're interacting with these different people, and with each interaction, they're gaining content, they're deepening their knowledge and their credibility, and becoming top of mind with that manufacturer. So it's a nice synergy that could be created, and all for the purpose of let's amplify those messages. Let's have something to talk about. Let's build credibility. So a lot of good here. It just maybe requires, I don't know, some organization, maybe a spreadsheet, maybe a editorial calendar of some sort.
Yeah, I'll share a couple tips on that. I mean, first one is we talked about this very early on. You got to know your audience, right? If you're going to start building your personal brand, regardless of what you do, you're not going to be a personal brand for everyone, right? Get very specific as to who you want to talk to. Even write out a couple of paragraphs and say, hey, my ideal persona, his name is Tim. He's a mid-level manager at a manufacturing company in Los Angeles. He enjoys craft beer and dirt bikes on the weekend. In his day job, he's been an engineer, and he just got promoted. He's a people manager for the first time. Like, be specific like that. I'm saying this from experience. This is what I did when I started manufacturing happy hour. I was targeting like a 33-year-old mid-level manager named Tim at a manufacturing company in LA. It just helps you really get specific as to who you're talking to and to dial in, hey, what does Tim care about? Whoever your Tim is, write the story about who they are a little bit, and then figure out, hey, what are the challenges they're facing in their role? What are their frequently asked questions? And start building the type of content or the subjects you're going to cover in your content from there. And then you brought up a great point, like make that little editorial calendar. And, I tell people all the time, don't overcomplicate it, keep it simple. Like if you're just getting started, post once a week or something like that. Pick something that's very doable and don't try to create really complicated content right out of the gate. Like actually, I was talking to a friend last week and he was saying, hey, I want to start creating content for B2B marketers, I believe was the niche he wanted to go into. And, my main lesson to him was, it's like, look, what you should do if you're thinking of doing video content, which this is what this individual is thinking of doing, I'm like, just film 3 videos on your iPhone to start, because you want to batch it a little bit. You want to get that initial set of content done. So that way you don't waste all your energy on the first video. You think, oh, this was so hard. How am I going to find time to do it again? Get the first ones done, because getting into a habit is what makes it easier to start doing this on a regular basis. So, I shared a video. I actually filmed a video on my phone right after that, just to say, hey, here are 3 tips I would recommend folks do if they want to get started. Don't overcomplicate it, batch your content, and add your personality to it. Those were the lessons I shared in that video. So to go back and summarize what we were just talking about here, know your audience, write down who they are and what they care about. That's step number 1 for figuring out what subjects you should cover in your content. And then once you know what that is, create a very basic content calendar. It could be just like, it could be a Post-it note. It could be an Excel sheet. It doesn't need to be long. And make those first 3 pieces of content. That's what I would say. Batch those first 3 pieces of content so you have something to share for a few weeks. And it's all about getting in the habit. It's about getting in the habit and trying to keep it as simple as possible at first. So
I love
those
these
are my lessons
first little baby steps. And
yes,
you can stand to do one more thing. If I could add to your list, I would say take someone else's post that's relevant to your audience, and add a very thoughtful comment to that post that provides value, your point of view, because it's a great way to get in front of somebody else's community, somebody else's audience that could be, potential prospects for you.
Completely agree. I tell people all the time, creating content is half of it. The other part is just getting involved in the conversations that are relevant to you, that are already there, because you nailed it. It's a lot easier to jump in and write a thoughtful 2-sentence reply to something. Like, it does not need to be a paragraph. It could just be, it does not take long to write this type of stuff. So excellent advice. Not only create your own content, but like you said, get in there to the conversations that are happening on the platforms where your audience is already hanging out.
Yeah. Well, I want to congratulate you on being so successful in building your personal brand, both when you were at Rockwell and seeing that success and then turning that into your own business. I mean, it's been inspirational to watch your journey, and I appreciate you sharing your story today, Chris.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Wendy. Always good to chat with you. Looking forward to chatting with you more very soon as well. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I will be seeing each other in Austin in just a few weeks for the Industrial Marketing Summit, and you'll be leading a panel on this very subject, on personal branding, on all different aspects of it. So if those listening didn't get enough, then come on to Austin, January 31st to February 2nd, and join us for the Industrial Marketing Summit. And you can find that at industrialmarketingsummit.com. And where can people find the Manufacturing Happy Hour, Chris?
Sure. So wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, just search Manufacturing Happy Hour. It's going to be one of the first things. And well, if you search it, it's going to be the one thing that comes up. But also manufacturinghappyhour.com. And of course, look for me on LinkedIn, connect with me, Chris Luecke, or follow the Manufacturing Happy Hour page over there. More than a few ways to find me over on the interwebs.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.